Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Would you want to live the same life over and over again 100 times over? What do you want to make out of your life? Who do you want to be? Look, life is short. You got what you got, and you really have to go for your own. And nothing will change unless you change. Guys, I'm helping men make that change at my intensive retreats in San Diego, California. Go to kfmretreat.com to learn more and be a part of a program that is transforming men's lives into the most powerful version of themselves. Again, that's kfmretreat.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Gary Carmell. He is the president of CWS Capital Partners, LLC, an investment management firm specializing in the acquisition, development, and management of apartment communities throughout the country. Gary joined CWS in 1987 and has been instrumental in growing the company's asset base from $500 million to nearly $3 billion. Gary, happy to have you here on the show.
It is my pleasure, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me.
Very interested to see how this unfolds here. Quite the background here, and recently you just came out with the book, holding it here in my hands, the philosophical investor, transforming wisdom into wealth.
Yes, it is a chronicle of my nearly 30-year career and journey here at CWS and in the
philosophers here in the
game of life.
The game of life. I like that. Let's dive in with Gary. We start off every show with a favorite success quote of the guest, or maybe something that they've lived by. And so I know you've got all the philosophers here in the book, so I know that's going to be a tough one. But what do you got for us? And then share with us what that means to you.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite pieces of advice is it's better to be a meaningful specific than a wandering generality. And for me, I've learned that when interacting with people and dealing with issues, it's just much better to be specific, and as opposed to being general. And people respond to that well. And I think the more specificity, the more clear it helps me become in my thinking and my decision-making process.
Got it. Versus being vague and uncertain, it's kind of like you're in the middle. You haven't decided an action to take or decided where you stand.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be somewhat lazy thinking. It's you come across an experience or two, and rather than noting down the specificity of it and how important it is, you just sort of generalize, and it doesn't help people, I think, in terms of interacting with them when you have an issue with them, or even identifying investment opportunities or challenges. It's just I don't know. It's just something that has always stuck with me, and it's an important lesson.
Got it. All right. Let's now dive into your story of how you got started with CWS, your investment firm, and then lead that to how the philosophical investor came to be.
It is a pretty unusual story. I went to UCLA for my undergraduate work, and while I was there, I met my future wife at the time, who was a year ahead of me. And so she graduated, and I had grown up in Chicago. And so when it came time for me to graduate, she said, well, if you want to stay together, I'm not really going to go to Chicago. So you need to stay in Southern California, and particularly move down to Orange County from Los Angeles. And I like to say, being the strong-willed person that I am and was, I said, of course, I'll do whatever you want. And so I go, but the problem is I don't really know anyone, in Orange County. My contacts were back in the Midwest or in Los Angeles. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to be managing stocks and bonds and work for an investment management company. She said, well, why don't you go to Newport Beach in Fashion Island, which is a business area, and there are a lot of firms there, and you can walk around with your resume and find firms to drop them off at and see if they're hiring. being new and naive into the business world and job market, I said, sure, this won't be a big deal. And so, well, it so happened that one of the first stops that I made, I went to the building and I looked at the marquee and the list of tenants there, and it said Clayton, Williams & Sherwood, Inc., an investment management firm. And so I said, hey, this could be a perfect opportunity. So I went up to the fourth floor, talked to the receptionist, asked if they were hiring. She goes, I think as a matter of fact, we are. So I wrote down on my resume, interested in a financial analyst position. And so it turned out I went to about 3 or 4 other firms, and I came to the conclusion this is just futile and somewhat humiliating. I mean, who's going to hire someone just walking in off the street with a resume? Well, so lo and behold, about a week later, I got a call from CWS, Clayton, Williams & Sherwood, and they said they were interested in interviewing me. And I asked them, well, what do you do? And they said, real estate. And I go, well, I've always wanted to be in real estate. And so it turned out I went through a pretty lengthy interview process. And when all was said and done, they actually offered me a position. And so I have been with the firm ever since. And I started as a financial analyst and have worked my way up through the company over the years to the point where now I am a partner, one of the principals, and the president of the firm.
Wow. It seems like everywhere you're going, you just erasing the job title that you're looking for.
Yes, that's right.
So how did you learn to play the game? I'm looking here at the first chapter, and you're learning to play the game of investing.
Well, growing up, I was always interested and enjoyed doing puzzles and working with numbers and statistics and finding patterns, particularly in numbers, and trying to find out why things worked or they didn't work. So I found myself, after starting the job, kind of diving into how the business worked, what were maybe some historical economic and financial correlations to the performance of the various investments. And so I really immersed myself into what were some critical success factors. And, it was one thing to kind of learn this intellectually and academically, which had a level of importance and value, but it was another to actually dive in and experience some of the challenges and some of the successes. Because when I started with the firm, it had already been 18 years old. It was founded in 1969 and had a very high level of success. But when I got there, things started to change, unfortunately or fortunately. I mean, fortunately for me, it was a great learning experience, but a lot of our properties were in Texas. And this was at a time when Texas started having a lot of financial challenges. Oil went from, at the time, about $40 a barrel down to 10. And the S&L debacle was headquartered or centered in Texas. And there was a lot of fraudulent lending, a lot of overbuilding. So what was going up very dramatically started to reverse. And that was a really important learning experience for me. We were working with investors that had only known success, and now suddenly we had to deal with a lot of significant challenges. So I would say it was just an innate curiosity, an analytical mind, and also kind of a right brain way of thinking. I did come out of college with a liberal arts background in political science, and I thought that that actually came in handy because it allowed me to think maybe a little differently and a little more creatively than a lot of people in the firm or in the business.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like a lot of students come out with a degree in a specific field and feel like they're kind of anchored into that field for the rest of their life. And often cases I've seen, and even in myself, you can really learn the job on the job and actually use your education in a different way to provide something new to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, interestingly, we have found the most successful people for our firm are those that, really have kind of grown up, had different jobs, had to kind of make their own way, really weren't handed things necessarily on, via a silver spoon, didn't necessarily go to the, top-notch, highest-end universities. And they're people that really just have a high level of common sense and don't necessarily need a high level of external validation, that they really get a lot of enjoyment and pleasure and reward for a job well done, kind of understanding the nuances of how to be successful, and being part of a team, and are able to sort of suppress their egos for the greater good. So yeah, I would say you're absolutely right that for a firm that is looking to grow people, it is really valuable to start them off fairly young, indoctrinate them in the culture, and have them grow and learn, as the business evolves.
Yeah, I think it provides more opportunity for a lot of people than they think. And so let's say I know absolutely nothing about investing in real estate. It looks like you guys specialize in luxury apartment communities. How can you explain what it is that your firm does to someone who doesn't know anything about investing in real estate?
Sure. Well, we basically aggregate capital from investors and pool them in quantities that allow us to buy and build or reposition apartment communities. And so what we do is we have vertically integrated organization that is able to find the opportunities, negotiate the transactions, do the due diligence to make sure that we understand what we're buying and that we can do our best to quantify the income stream and the expenses associated with that apartment business that we're buying. And then we are able to optimize the capitalization of the investment by matching the equity that we raise from our investors with debt that we put in place with our strong lending relationships. So we then are able to buy the properties, close the transactions, and integrate them into our property management system. And then what we do is we develop a business plan that is tied to the performance set of projections that we put forward to our investors. And we try to add value to the investment, either through upgrading the individual units or the community, changing the resident profile, or building something from scratch. Or if we just think we're getting a good buy and we don't have to do much to it, we will do that as well. And at the end of the day, the goal is to provide a competitive return to our investors for the risk that they are exposed to that is generally yield oriented. In other words, it produces dividends and at the same time has appreciation potential. And so when all is said and done, it's fairly typical, or I'd say our average returns over the years have been maybe 13 to 14% per year, which includes cash flow and appreciation. And then there are a lot of very favorable tax advantages to owning real estate.
Got it. And has your company always been into the luxury apartment buildings, or were you guys ever doing smaller projects and then you've grown to do projects such as these?
Actually, when I started, the firm was entirely focused on mobile home parks, of all things, a pretty interesting niche business. And then we started getting into apartments in the late 80s, early 90s, and realized that that business was probably better suited for us in the long run. And so we have a portfolio of around, say, 23,000 units. And it ranges from, very high-end luxury communities that may even be high rises in urban areas to communities that are not as high quality, but they're very good areas, and we are repositioning them by putting a lot of money into them. We also have student properties, which are near campuses, and we have properties in urban areas, suburban areas, and as I said, we also build. So it is a pretty wide spectrum, but I'd say generally speaking, our clientele is fairly well educated with, good earning power and earning potential.
Okay, got it. And so what was the leap for you guys? What kind of changes in decision making or strategy, if any, did you have to make to go from 500 million to 3 billion?
Yes, it required a thoughtful approach. We thought, first of all, the business was a good business with good long-term fundamentals, and a lot of our growth has probably come in the last 5 or 6 years or so. And we've had to invest very heavily in the talent to integrate that growth and manage it, particularly on the property management side, the information technology front, in terms of being able to interact with our resident customers on a more real-time 24/7 basis, and systems that allow us to have better information to make better, more timely decisions, and beef up our investor relations team our acquisitions team. So really kind of across the board, I would say. But with all that being said, we're a business with a lot of stability, or a firm with a lot of stability. The average tenure of our employees is probably close to 10 years, despite the growth that we've had. So, it's a good balance between seasoned veterans and new blood. And so you get the creativity and hungry mindset of the new with sort of the risk management and experience of the older.
Very good combination. So what is the intersection in your book, The Philosophical Investor, between philosophy and investing? Have you always been into philosophy and maybe in some of the Greek philosophers, and how does this come into investing?
Right. Yes, I think my liberal arts background and curious mindset have helped in that regard.
Yes.
And there's a great quote from Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner and one of my one of my heroes, who said, "To the man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail." So if you only have one tool in your toolbox, then you're going to be very limited in how you see the world. And and there's also another quote from Schopenhauer, who is an important philosopher that I tap into in the book, who said, people mistake the vision that they have for the vision of the world, or they basically apply their kind of limited worldview and think that's how everyone sees the world. And so it's been my philosophy that it's important to open up my worldview by traveling, by reading different thinkers, not just being a left brain analytical person focused completely on people who are investing and had success in investing. So what I'm trying to do with the philosophical investor is take the best insights into human nature and worldliness from the timely wisdom of these geniuses like Shakespeare, Schopenhauer, Munger, Buffett, George Soros, people like that, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, and apply it, and then marry that with knowledge of oneself, because we are often our own worst enemy when it comes to investing, because we are emotional machines who are very subjected to waves of fear and greed that can lead us to buy at the top and sell at the bottom. And so to me, I'm just trying to expand my toolbox so that I can open myself up to limit my blind spots as much as I can, and to surround myself with other people and thinkers that can help me make better decisions. And so that's what the philosophical investor is really all about.
And is this something that you apply into your business and you have seen massive results?
I have, yes. Schopenhauer said that the task at hand is not to see what no one else sees, but to think what no one else thinks about that which everyone sees. So it's how do you take something that everyone is looking at and has a uniform opinion about and look at it in a different way and come to different conclusions. And that's where really significant money can be made. So, for example, we believe that the subprime crisis that took place in the United States and then throughout the world was devastating to the economy and to society. And that coming out of the recession, the Great Recession, that we would turn into much more of a renter nation, because there was no way that housing, home ownership, and the emphasis on it that got us into the mess was going to get us out of it. So we believe that we were going to have this kind of once-in-a-generation investing opportunity to buy and aggregate a lot of these rental units, because people didn't have the credit and to be able to buy homes or the inclination. So I guess kind of that worldview and understanding the macroeconomic forces and previous downturns when bubbles had burst and how long it took for them to recover really informed me that housing and home ownership was not going to snap back, and it was going to take many, many, many years for it to recover on a meaningful basis, and that renting would be the way to go. And then we married that with something that was quite unconventional. During the Great Recession, the government stepped in and the Federal Reserve stepped in on a very aggressive basis. And there was a lot of fiscal spending from the government that led to $1 trillion plus deficits. and then the Federal Reserve was stepping in and really loosening up monetary policy. Most people looking at that were very concerned that interest rates were going to go higher, inflation was going to spiral out of control, and that it would be important to lock down one's debt on a fixed rate basis for a long period of time. I actually had the opposite view. My study of the 1920s and the 1930s in history told me that not only would rates not go up, but they would drop significantly. And as a result, we have put a tremendous emphasis to borrow using variable rate loans versus fixed rate. And that cost of funds has been quite a bit less than had we borrowed on a fixed rate basis. And we had many, many more options with our variable rate loans because they don't have these onerous prepayment penalties like fixed rate loans do. And I don't want to get into all the technicalities of that, but the point is, when I did an analysis, and I think we have saved on a portfolio basis nearly $30 million in interest by having been variable rate borrowers versus fixed rate. So to step back, the philosophical approach and open-minded way of looking at the world allowed me and us to take a look and determine that renting was going to be the way to go. And when we married these investments in rental housing with these lower cost variable rate loans, it was really a beautiful combination that has led to tremendous results for our investors.
That's great. That's great. And can you share maybe a big failure you've experienced in your investing career and what you learned from that using some of the things that you've written in The Philosophical Investor?
Yeah, well, I now have to go back to my little technical discussion here on these fixed rate loans versus variable. Okay. Sorry to do that, but that was one of the biggest mistakes we made.
Okay.
We used to say we don't get paid to predict interest rates because we are real estate investors and we're buying real estate. But what happens is when you borrow on a fixed rate basis for 10 years and you prepay your loan early, the lender wants to be paid, compensated for getting its money back early. So if I borrow at 6% and then rates drop to 2%, and there's this 4-point spread, the lender says, hey, I don't want my money back. I want to be compensated for having to reinvest at this much lower interest rate environment. So essentially, we couldn't get out of these loans when rates dropped because the prepayment penalties were so big. And what happened was in the early 2000s, and we had the tech wreck, we bought these apartment properties in a lot of these technology cities, and things went backwards. Jobs were lost. Renters started becoming homeowners. Our occupancies were dropping. Interest rates dropped, and we really financially couldn't get out of this fixed rate debt. So that really was a terrible position for us to be in. It was one I'm like, I never want to go through this again. And so we went to gravitate to these variable rate loans where it's very easy to get out of and it's not costly. So that was a very, very important lesson for us. And I apologize for kind of deviating into the technical financial realm here, but it was one of the most important lessons that I experienced and one of the most, I guess, important failures.
Got it. It is a little technical, but I think we can kind of see how you applied what you written in the book and how you were able to bounce back from that. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how do you acquire your investors? There's so many investment firms out there. Why would someone want to invest with you? And what's that process look like?
Right. I think our track record has been helpful, being around since 1969, and we invest in all of our projects. And our investors have been cultivated really all through referrals over the years. And we have a number of third-generation investors. As I mentioned, the firm was started in 1969, and there were friends and family members of the principals. And then the success that they experienced was such that they would pass on these investments to their heirs or to their children just as gifts, and then their children had a level of success, and that was passed on to others. And I would say at the same time, it's not like we didn't have our challenges. We have, but people really respected how we worked through them. And they know that we were trustworthy and that we dealt with them in a very open, honest, and fair way. And it wasn't like we were trying to hide the bad news. When we experienced difficulties, we brought them in and treated them as partners. So people like to invest with us because We're very communicative. They feel like we kind of bring their investments to life for them. They're very tangible, and we're very open. And so we've been gravitating more recently to wealth managers who really love what we do because it offers their investors a lot of yield, relatively speaking, in this low yield environment with appreciation potential. And as I mentioned, it's very tangible for them and they enjoy the investment process and the experience. So to make a long story short, it's primarily through referrals.
Got it. I guess when you have that, background and you're providing results, that tends to happen.
Right.
Can you share with us the benefits of real estate? Why is it that you guys have stayed? You're managing billions of dollars worth of assets. Like, why have you stayed in real estate and haven't shifted into other realms and other things that you guys could be investing in?
I like to think of real estate often as a call option on the growth of America in particular cities. And so if America's growing, which it will continue, it has good demographics, particularly relative to the rest of the world. And we have a society that tends to reward innovation and risk-taking. I feel like it is a business that we understand well, and it's hard to, yes, new supply can hit the market, new competition, but there's always going to be a basic need for housing. And I like that aspect. And if we can make good decisions about buying in areas that will be experiencing growth and maybe some difficulty in creating a lot of new supply, I just feel like it has really good long-term fundamentals. It's a leverageable asset, meaning you can borrow against it because of the relative predictability and stability of the cash flows. And so if our timing is right and the income stream continues to produce and grow, we can produce, very compelling returns because of the borrowed money that we're using. And on top of that, it offers really wonderful tax advantages. A lot of the distributions to the investors can be somewhat sheltered from current taxation because of the depreciation. And then when you sell an investment, you can reinvest via 1031 tax-deferred exchange. So you can keep compounding the growth of your capital without the tax man coming in and taking a big bite out of it. So there's a lot of really wonderful features to it.
Got it. And just curious, thinking about the future of real estate and investing, what are your thoughts on crowdfunding for real estate? It seems kind of new to that industry.
It is. I'm always a little uncomfortable when money is fairly easy to raise from people that maybe aren't so sophisticated. And I don't want to see, that's okay. Important to be, I don't want to be so general there, right? But it's going to have a place. It's already starting to have a place. So I don't want to be so old school and ignore it as well. For us, it hasn't been, the right fit. I'm sure others will do fine with it. And I think it will continue to be more of a force. My concern is if things don't go well and it turns out there are sponsors that are taking advantage of the easy ability to raise money, that it may create a cloud over that way of raising money. So we prefer to have a more high-touch relationship approach with the people who invest with us.
Okay, just curious, just a thought there. And right now, I'm from San Diego here, and so there's a lot of kind of debate on whether the Chargers are staying in San Diego, and they might be going to, I believe, your location in Los Angeles, in Carson. Do you guys pay attention to stuff like that? If a major stadium is going to be built in Carson, which most likely will, it may not be the Chargers, but it could be the Raiders or the Rams, have shown a lot of interest. Do you guys look at these types of big shifts where there could be a big boom in an economy and would you be looking into Carson to start buying real estate?
We do. We do look for catalysts for sure. I would say for the last 15 or 20 years, NFL teams have been using Los Angeles for negotiating leverage. So we haven't taken that so seriously here.
What do you mean negotiating?
To get a better deal for the cities that they're already in, they believe. So this sounds like this has more momentum. But we did buy something in East Houston, which was a really kind of, I would just say a bit of a grungy area for, historically speaking. But then the Houston Dynamo soccer team was planning on building a stadium there. It wasn't a slam dunk it was going to happen, but our research told us there was a high probability, and it was a big investment. So we decided to take the plunge and buy this particular property. We thought that the cost was compelling and the downside was limited, and that if this happened, this would be a really good catalyst for the area. And it did. It really sparked a lot of new development and walkability, and very positive things have taken place. So yes, we absolutely look for catalysts, particularly on the employment front, and for job announcements and things like that. So.
Okay. And this is just more kind of on the future of real estate. If you're paying attention to what Amazon is trying to do and trying to eliminate corporate real estate, they want to use drones to deliver products and just have large warehouses, stationed across America where they have drones literally drop off products at your doorstep. I'm wondering if you guys have been looking into this and how this could change corporate real estate in terms of like a Target or a Walmart being in existence. Or
yeah, it's fascinating. And if you overlay driverless cars,
right,
and Uber, it really forces one to think pretty deeply about parking structures and the importance of them, and how urban areas may change and evolve. And in what you're saying about Amazon, that's one of the reasons why we've stayed away from retail, for example, or office maybe less so, but the internet is a very disrupting technology, right, of course. Yes. So, but housing will always be needed.
Right.
So that's what we like. So yeah, I don't have very good answers. So it's just important that question be thought through. It's not going to turn around overnight.
Right.
And so, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
I was actually hoping to drive some discussion from you. I just think that it could. I find myself more and more just buying stuff on Amazon. Like, I do not like going grocery shopping. I do not like having to buy to go to a store to buy some little USB drive or something, because that just takes like 45 minutes just to drive, go there. And I just see this trend of from other people just constantly buying. Amazon Fresh is growing. I think it just saves people time to just not have to go to the store. So I just feel that retailers could be going out of business in the next 20 years.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts about that. And one is, interestingly, we're making an investment in Seattle near Amazon's headquarters, where they're gobbling up space like crazy. So that's kind of a play there on banking on them continuing to be such a disruptor. But what you say speaks to me, and you're clearly not alone, and speaks to the power of urbanization as well, and density, because the more people that are congregated together, the more efficient it is for them to service that group of people.
Yes.
And I think as people kind of take a step back from interacting with others at the store, or doing what you're doing by ordering online, they probably want to fill that void maybe by connecting with them socially in restaurants and bars and walkable neighborhoods. And that's why I think these, and social media allows people to stay connected, so they need less living space, because they're not necessarily entertaining in their homes or their apartments.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but they find that the area is part of their living space. Hey, let's just go walk to Starbucks or meet here. And so there's a lot of interesting social dynamics and evolution that's taking place. And that's why I think it speaks to the renaissance of these urban areas.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of things happening in the future, and it's exciting, to say the least. Let's now dive into the knowledge round. I'm just going to ask a few short questions here. So, Gary, are you ready for the knowledge round?
I don't think I have a choice, right?
Yeah, there it is.
We were all born completely unique. Your DNA has never occurred in the past and will never occur again in the future. This fact makes you unique, and there's a purpose behind this. There's a reason behind all of this. You have some great purpose that you need to fulfill for being here. And it's a shame if that purpose never comes alive and it goes into the graveyard, the richest land in the world. Don't let that be you. Create the life of your dreams, break through, and reach your full potential. Check out how my retreats can transform your life and light a fire inside of you to go after your dreams and become the best man that you can be. Go to kfmretreat.com to learn more and apply. Again, that's kfmretreat.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
So all that happens in post. And the first question I have for you, Gary, is, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling kind of lost or unsure of what they should do, career-wise?
Right. It's hard because I have the last chapter in my book is so the book is transforming wisdom into wealth. And
yes,
I think a wealthy person has a certain set of characteristics to them that I describe in the book. But one of the important components when all is said and done is I say it's important to get out of the no wonder years and to go back to the wonder years. I think some of us of my age know the show The Wonder Years, and it sparks a lot of nostalgia about those days when we were a kid. And so is there a way to kind of take a step back and find out what stimulates wonder in your life? And I know that's kind of a deep sort of concept, but what is it that really floats your boat, that when times get tough, that you're going to be willing to dig in and actually kind of find the treasure and the joy, even in the challenges and the sorrow? And so it's a lot of us are kind of find ourselves working for the man and working for the paycheck and the mortgage. And so it's, here I'm kind of not following my advice of being a meaningful specific. I'm being a bit of a wandering generality here, but it is really, find what sparks you, what makes you smile, what makes you laugh, what makes you you, and are you going, and look at your job and what you're doing in your career, maybe in an open-minded way. Is there a way to reposition it so that you can take a more healthy, positive attitude and relationship with it? Sometimes I do like to say the grass is always greener where you water it, and it's not on the other side. So don't look that gift horse in the mouth. You may be right where you should be. So
yeah, that's funny. I heard that 3 times in the last week. Someone's told me that. I'm like, all right, something's going around. Is this in a book or what's happening here? Okay. The next question I have for you, Gary, is what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Well, I would say that I was lucky. There's a chapter in my book called The Power of Partnership. And I am just so much more effective and complete with powerful partners in my life in the business world and in my personal life. And they do say, it's been said that a good friend stabs you in the front. And so the people that I have connected with who are very important in my life just make me better. I could not be where I am without my wife. She has this sixth sense and this vision to kind of see things where things are headed and what I need and how to kind of kick me in the butt to move forward in the right direction. That left to my own devices, I'm sure inertia would take over. And I find the same thing with my business partners. So finding great partners just goes such a long way, in my opinion.
Yeah, really good. And what would you say are 2 or 3 of your most influential books and why?
I would say The Way of the Peaceful Warrior was a very influential book by Dan Millman. It just talked about someone that was really lost and lacking meaning and how he found it. So I really thought that was quite important. In the investment arena, there is The Alchemy of Investing by George Soros, which was actually a trading diary. And it really opened my eyes to the real-time thinking that one has to go through to make decisions in a world of imperfect information. It's easy to do things in hindsight, but to be in the moment, dealing with your fears and your concerns and your optimism and euphoria, and not knowing how things are going to unfold was highly influential to me. I love the work related to Carl Jung. I'm kind of a Jungian, and the power of one's subconscious and what is going on in the depths of one's psyche and how that makes us reaction machines than responsive, thoughtful individuals at times has been highly influential to me too.
I'm looking at his books now. And this next question is more of a scenario. It goes like this. What would you or imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
Oh, wow. I would say that have fun. Don't lose spontaneity. So don't lose that aspect of one's youth. But also know, I think one of my themes in life is every individual is going through a civil war. They have their kind of desiring side and their impulsive side. And then they have that side that kind of wants to be there for others and to do the right thing. And just know that the seeds that you plant at that age will sprout. They'll either sprout into beautiful flowers and forests, or they're going to be weeds that can create problems in the future. So don't give up having fun, but look ahead and try not to get caught up in the moment and make that impulsive decision you're going to regret later in life.
Very good advice. And so final question here, even if you have to summarize some of your main points, but just thinking back to where you were when you were going door to door in Newport Beach area, looking for jobs, to where you are now, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Well, I would say that it is a journey. I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And so make it a game. Set goals for yourself. Be flexible. Just you cannot predict the future. You have to roll with the punches. Just know what you're good at. Focus on it. Be committed to it. And be indispensable in whatever ways you can be. It's important to add value and to make a difference. And so if you're going to commoditize yourself, you're not going to be successful in the way you probably want to be. So find out what that niche is and how you can distinguish yourself, and don't be afraid to set yourself apart. Very well said. Very well said. And so that's going to conclude the knowledge round there. And so I just want to touch on briefly, like, what's exciting you today? What are you looking forward to? What's getting you out of bed in the morning today? Well, I have 2 kids, so I'm really pleased with how they're engaging with their passions in life. So I like to see how that unfolds. Moving into kind of the empty nester mode of our life. So I would say rekindling and reestablishing a stronger relationship with my wife. I would say growing the firm in a way that people can enjoy the benefits of the success that we're creating, not to widen that and to continue to create success for our investors. And I'm really excited about the book that I wrote and getting the message out. It was a lifelong goal. It was on my bucket list. And I really hope that people take to it, that they find that it can make a difference in their lives. All right, Gary, thank you so much for being on the show. And so for all the listeners, you can follow up with Gary at GaryCarmell.com. That's GaryCarmell.com. And you can also check out the book, The Philosophical Investor, on Amazon. Just simply type in The Philosophical Investor or Gary Carmell, and it pops right up there, #1 in Amazon. So Gary, thank you so much for sharing and giving me your time here. I appreciate your story and giving us some lessons from your journey. Well, it was a pleasure, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get 3 tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Fairby, and I'll see you in the next episode.